Good evening. We'll get started. As always, I think we're at our conversation number 35, and I've really been long looking forward to doing this introduction, which actually has something to do with this room, because as you know, we'll hear about the Providence Public Library, and the father of John Nicholas Brown, whom you see on the wall, he had given some money and was there at the groundbreaking ceremony in 1900 when the building on Washington Street was built. And he caught a cold, which developed into pneumonia, and he died. And as a result, his son, who was like very small baby, first they called the uncle, his brother over from Europe, and he died. He stood on board of his ship and then caught something else and also died. So that as a result, he was the richest baby in America without two, father figures there. And then John Nicholas Brown, after whom our center is named, also gave some money to finish the main building on Washington Street. That's our connection here. But I think one could title the career, and what I want to just very briefly outline Jack Martin's work here in Providence as the miracle on Washington Street. Because what he has done for the city and for obviously the Providence Public Library is absolutely unequaled. It's a fantastic success story, and once I heard about it and I met with him and saw it all fell together, I was just so touched that I immediately said, "Oh, you have to come and talk with us." Right? It was by the waterfront at the wedding of friends of ours. So it's a really delight to have Jack here. He's born in Georgia. Went to University of Georgia, then went to Pratt for his University of Georgia was, like you said, theater, undergrad theater and so on, and then he went to Pratt to get his master's in library sciences, and then worked actually in Providence for 2 years at the public library and fell in love with the city, I guess, but then went to New York City and worked at the public library for many years in a whole sequence of different roles, assistant director of public programs, and many other aspects. So that went on until 2012. And then, of course, he came here to Providence, and that's where that miraculous story sets in, because as some of you might recall, there was a terrible incident in 2009 in a way of falling out between the library and the city, and lack of money, and basically the library had to shut down, basically, and you started from scratch and came here. And you were so successful in fundraising. I'll just give you one number, which is so mind-blowing. And Jack has obviously a very good hand at fundraising. And I'll just give you two numbers maybe. So he has a development office now with several people, but still the fundraising is 60% your work. And they raise about 2.5 million annually, which is an increase from 2014 when he started of 1,500%, just to give you an idea. It's absolutely mind-blowing. So it's just absolutely wonderful. So he turned this library around, put it on different feet. It's not a city-sponsored entity anymore. A lot of private money went into it, and suddenly we have a public library again. It's just an incredibly wonderful story. And so to date, they have raised 22 million. There's a new building, there are new parts of the building. The whole place looks absolutely splendid. And it's really thanks to you, Jack. Just wanted to, before I finish here, just quickly mention that you're also engaged, of course, in your profession, executive board member of the Rhode Island Library Association and the American Library Association, which is a huge organization. And you've been the president of the Young Adult Library Services Association, and you won, among many other accolades, the Most Innovative Company Award from Providence Business News, recognizing all the creativity that you brought to our library. And I just wanted to add, you're also an adjunct professor at the University of Rhode Island. You've taught at many other schools, at Pratt and Queens College and so on. But I was struck, I came across a piece that you wrote when Barton Gregorian died. And he was my favorite president at Brown. He was president when I arrived many years ago, wonderful man. And you met with him, and the first question, you had just accepted the job to come to Providence and figure out this, what looked like an unsolved situation. And Barton said, "Why in the world would you take on that job," right? And then you sat down and you've sort of talked about strategy and some ideas and what to do, how to repair the relationship with the city and with the donors and bring everything back. And I was very touched by your article because you so kindly and humbly said, I don't think I or PPL would be close where we are without Vartan Gregorian's sage advice. I must say, I love Vartan Gregorian, but I think all the credit goes to you. You've turned this library around and created this miracle on Washington Street, and I look forward to hearing more about your work and the library, and I hope you help me welcome Jack Martin.
I have to say, it's really funny, that picture that he had up just now, that was taken for PBN in April of 2020, and then PBN came back and took another picture of me in 2021, and I looked super haggard after COVID. It's actually the difference was palpable. Here we go. So I don't know how to follow that up. That was great. So just to sort of fill in a little bit from where I'm coming from. So I am from Georgia. I was a really small redneck town in Northeast Georgia. At the age of 13, my mom volunteered me to work for my local public library in Cornelia. And I thought, my God, I'm a big enough loser as it is already. This is just going to make things worse. And so I went to college, and I worked at the Athens Library in Athens, Georgia. And then I made this mistake of, I tried to come back to live in Demarest, which I don't know why I did that. And I had this realization, was like, wait a minute, this is not who I am. This is not where I want to be. And I had one of my best friends from undergrad, his wife got into the RISD Masters of Painting program. And he's like, dude, come up to Providence. The party's up here. So in 1998, there was no party in Providence, at least that I was aware of. And I did meet my husband at the library. So it's funny that you say fall in love with the Providence. So I did meet my husband and fell in love, but I did not like Providence at all. And the library when I worked there, it was it was not a fun place. It was almost like a toxic place to work. But I actually got to cut my teeth in working in youth services at the Washington Park Branch Library and the South Providence Library. But so when the opportunity came to move to New York City in 2001, because September the 2nd, 2001 was a great day to move to New York City. I jumped headfirst into teen services, and I kind of worked my way up through the ranks. I headed up teen services, and they gave me children's services, and they gave me adult services. And by the end of it, my department ran about 67,000 programs in the Bronx, Manhattan, and Staten Island, and worked with the two other library systems of New York City and the New York Yankees to plan summer readings. So lots of big stuff. So I had left that job, and then I went to work for a nonprofit because I wanted to break out into other library work, because I wanted to explore museums and other nonprofits. And this job came up, and I was like, I'd never been through an executive level interview before, so I thought, well, why don't I just throw my hat in and let's see what happens. And I don't know if you've ever been in a job interview that you didn't care about it if you got the job or not. And I thought, I don't want to move back to Providence, and they probably don't want me, so let's just see what happens. But as the interview progressed, it actually became very clear that the board wanted to do something very, very different, and that really appealed to me. I was really interested in museum work. My mom was an art teacher, so I was very interested in art. And the library, the Providence Public Library, is actually kind of a very cool mashup of a local history museum and a public library. So I thought, this is kind of a cool thing, and here I am. So when I was working at New York Public Library, libraries, when you think about libraries, they're very much, people talk a lot about access and providing opportunity. So when you think about public libraries, you think, oh my gosh, there's so many books, there's so much stuff. What do we do with it all? But when I was working in programming, I basically was very interested in thinking about what are people actually learning and what are they achieving as a result of what's happening in the library. So I guess the board got really, really excited about that, and that's kind of why they hired me, because we talk a lot about libraries and education, and we think that, public libraries have always probably been a part of people's education, I think. People come to study there, they come to check out books and learning, whether it's just for themselves or whether it's for class or for something that's required. But we've been talking a lot about education, and So in 2014, when I came to the library, I was thrown headfirst into strategic planning. And we emerged from that process with a new vision of how the library could deliver and support people's education. So I don't know if this is kind of a common sort of theme when we talk about public libraries, but we have basically spent, since 2014, we've kind of evolved from this notion of a grocery store public library where you kind of come in and you get something and we say, hope this helps you with your life, bye-bye. We've changed more into a kitchen model since 2014, where basically we invite members of the community, learners, library staff, other partners, and nonprofits, and we've actually been creating real learning experiences for people where sometimes they're year-long courses and classes, sometimes they're 8 to 12-week classes, where we can actually tell where people they've gotten jobs. We had a partnership with Roger Williams University where you could actually, if you were a high school student or an adult, you could get credit towards an undergraduate degree at Roger Williams University. We work very closely with PASA and the Advanced Course Network to help high school students take our classes, and they actually get credit towards their diploma at the public library. And I always say that public libraries are kind of the safety net for people who can't make it in the regular systems, our government systems. So we hear about what's happening in Providence public libraries, Providence public schools. The libraries there is a safety net for some of the students who really can't succeed in the classroom, and by taking our classes, which are hopefully engaging, designed for youth, and it's a safe place to fail if you can't make it. We just make sure we put that scaffolding into the class curriculum to where if it doesn't work out, then we'll just keep trying until you get it, to where they actually can be successful and get their high school diploma. So all of this has been going on. These are just a few examples of the types of programs that we offer. We have teen squads that one year they were studying marketing and working with different sort of spaces in downtown Providence, like the skating rink or the zoo, to basically create marketing plans for them. We have a program called the Road Coders, where when Governor Raimondo first came into office, she was really excited about bringing businesses into the state, and a lot of those businesses were technology infrastructure, security, and so she basically funded all of these agencies to create courses and classes so that Rhode Islanders could get the skills to actually work in these industries. But unfortunately, those classes were too hard and the majority of the people failed. So we kind of created the Road Coders it was a very basic introduction to online coding. And we can actually trace how people can have taken the Road Coders and they've kind of moved their way up towards the more advanced classes. And then they actually got jobs as a result of that. Data Navigators is another very advanced technology class where we teach both high school students and adults data visualization. It's highly in demand from local businesses as well. So that's still going on. We have citizenship classes, English as a second language. We've been working really closely with Crossroads, Rhode Island, to get people housing. We have something called a Learning Lounge, which is a very basic introduction to, it's a one-on-one training where you can get help with your resume, you can get help job searching, you can get help finding out where English classes are available. Basically anything we will help you with whatever you need. And again, we have been tracing how people have actually really achieved as a result of this. We have a campaign called PPL Alum, and it's on our website, and it's basically the names and faces of people who have achieved something at the library. It's really, really, really terrific to see. These are just a few of our partnerships. We've got plenty more ever since, but in that strategic plan where we came out of this sort of education agenda, one of our second goal was to become Providence's and the state's best collaborator. And I think we've done a really, really good job of that. So at the same time, we have all these classes and courses going on at the library. We were not designed to be a classroom. The classroom is kind of upstairs on the 5th floor, which is really hard to find and sort of not conducive to learning. And it's really in demand. And at the same time, when I came to the Providence Public Library, actually in the interview with the former director, I asked her, are there any capital issues with the building? And she's like, it's fine. I was like, how's the roof? It's fine. It's fine? It's fine. So within, I would say 6 months after the job, I got kind of handed a $3.5 million estimate to do sprinkler installations at the library, because we were, after the 2012 renovations, which some of you may have actually come to an event at the library for the event spaces, we were discovered by the fire department, and we were under an obligation to fully fire protect the building by 2018. And then we also had leaks in the 1900 part of the building, and I got an estimate for about $5 million, or for gutter repairs, which was about $4,500 a linear foot to repair the gutters. So all of this is going on. We're talking about education. And at that moment, the board basically decided, rather than installing sprinklers in a really dilapidated building that hadn't been repaired since, or hadn't been renovated since 1987, we decided to kind of recreate or redesign the entire library with this sort of education agenda in mind. So now I'm going to take you through a visual tour, and I've arranged it to where you can walk in the door, and we're going to start at the ground floor and then work our way up. And it's a lot of pretty pictures, but I will hopefully talk you through all of it. And then by the end of it, we'll have some time for some Q&A. Just to give you a sense of the funding that went into this building, we got a $1 million league gift from Roz Sinclair, a local who loves public libraries. She's very generous. A lot of you may or may not know that public libraries in Rhode Island are very lucky. They can get reimbursed for up to 50% of renovation costs or new construction costs. So we got about $9.2 million from the state. We got $1.5 million from the Champlain Foundation. They were super generous. We got $440,000 from the National Endowment for the Humanities, because we have an incredible special collections department with items dating back to, from cuneiform tablets dating back to like 2000 BCE, all the way up to the AS-220 archive and even more contemporary items. So they were really excited to help us preserve that. We got $500,000 from an anonymous foundation, $200,000 from RISCA to repair a 255-person auditorium. And I do the capital campaign hustle every day. So I always, with these presentations, I say, if you know somebody around who loves public libraries, who has $7.5 million or less or more, to please give me a call, because we need all the help that we can get. But yeah, so I'm going to start walking you through some of these spaces. This is the architect's rendering of the building at night. One of the coolest things that we were able to do was actually increase the window space. So if you, on the sort of the second floor, if you were in that space prior to the renovation, the windowsills were about 6.5 feet high, so you could only actually look up into the sky. But we lowered the windowsills, and we also lowered the windowsills on the ground floor. So now if you're a child or if you're in a wheelchair, you can actually connect with the sidewalk outside, which is really, really cool. We wanted to build more transparency between what goes on in the city and then what happens inside the library. And we wanted people to be able to see everything. We also lit it, which is really cool. So you see the front door right there in the middle. And this is kind of a not so exciting photograph, but one of the things we really wanted to do was to improve wayfinding. So if you had been into the library previously, you probably got lost because it was kind of like a rabbit warren. But we cut this giant 3-story atrium up through all 3 floors. So now hopefully you can walk in and you'll be able to orient yourself and be able to figure out where you need to go to do whatever it is you need to do. This is directly behind the staircase. This is a popular browsing area. And this has actually been one of the really most popular, some of the most popular seating since we've been open for the past year and a half. People love to sit here and study. They have meetings. It's been really, really terrific. And then you can see the glass back there. So our stacks used to be closed up until I think the early 1970s. And that used to be a wall. And I'll show you later on a close-up of that space. Actually, this is the close-up of the space. I'm brilliant. So these beautiful seating areas are all on the first 4 floors of the stacks. They used to be closets full of junk. We went through over 170 dumpsters to clean out the closets of the library, and not talking books, we're talking about broken coffee makers, old Christmas trees, appliances, everything. We were pack rats and hoarders. So now we have these beautiful spaces where people can sit and hang out and read, which are really, really terrific. And we opened up more floors of the stacks to the public Previously, I think we only had like 2.5 floors open to the public, and now we have 4, which is really great. So this is the workshop space, which is front and center. This is meant to be our main classroom space. We talked about lifting all the traditional library resources off the ground floor and making the ground floor be our innovation floor. So on this side of the building, we have this great workshop space. You can split it into 2 different classrooms, or there's actually a classroom in the back, or you can have one giant class in the front. It's really exciting when you get 40 teenagers in there using all of our cool maker equipment and building stuff. That space that looks really large now looks very empty. On the opposite side of the space of the floor, which on the corner of Empire and Washington, I don't have a picture of it because it's just dead space right now. We're really excited. We're working with, we do a lot of workforce development at Providence Public Library, and we were hoping to put a cafe into the other side. And we have a partner, the Genesis Center from South Providence, who has a culinary arts workforce development program. And they wanted a space to give their students on-the-job experience. So actually starting on June the 6th, they're breaking ground and they're opening up, hopefully in early spring, CHOP, the culinary hub of Providence, which should be really, really cool. This is the classroom space at the back of the workshop. You can fit about 30 people there. So it's really interesting. The goal of this was really to try and have the library have as many activities happening all at once as possible. So you could have things happening here, you could have a movie in the auditorium, you could have a wedding going on in the event spaces. That was really the goal. And then as we go through the slides, you'll also see we tried to keep the building, it comes across probably as very colorful and very industrial. And we left sort of everything open because we know that when library services change in another 50 years, we won't have to rebuild or build out or tear out anything. We could just switch things around. So that was kind of the thinking behind that. Here is a view of that atrium from the first floor, where this is where primarily all of the library services are happening. And then this is the main one-stop shop for checking out books, asking questions. I do like to point out that the desk, the information desk, is shaped like the Millennium Falcon. And then you can see on the left, that is where we tried to Metropolitan Museum of Art, the original 1900 building. We had hoped to do that more, but there was so much wiring behind everything. That was the only spot we could get. But it's kind of cool to see what at least that part of the building looked like and how sort of the 2 buildings kind of like smush together. And then this is the main adult reading room. It's the Information Commons. People like to refer to the color as Jack Martin orange. That is my favorite color. I did not choose that color, but it looks really, really great. And when you're on the street at night and the lights are on, that floor just oozes a beautiful sort of orange hue out into the public. So everything here from a computer lab to great reading spaces, our DVD collections, newspapers. You can't see it in these pictures. I think you might see it in the next one. But we are home to the Rhode Island Index, which is a giant retro card catalog from the 50s. We had hired a librarian since 1900 until 2002, I think, to catalog the Providence Journal every day. So we are the only place where you can actually search the Providence Journal by subject heading for free in the state, and people come from all over the state to use that. And it feels very old when you're doing it, but it is kind of fun. And it is a giant card catalog, and as I've been doing the tours, I've been kind of looking at the drawers, and there are 5 drawers dedicated to murders. I would also say that on the top right, next to where that bookshelf is, you can't see it in this picture, but we were able to add the only window into this building because I like to call them the Hysterical Commission, but I'll say the Historic Commission, deemed this building historic, even though it is a generic ripoff of the Toledo Public Library from 1938. But we were able to add a beautiful window on that end, so now you have this beautiful view going south. And our research showed that when this building was built, the architects basically pushed it out 20 extra feet onto the sidewalk because the beautiful 1900 building was not considered to be in vogue in 1953, and they wanted to sort of close it off. And this, you can actually see the Rhode Island Index down there on the left, and this is the view sort of going back the other way. So lots of places for people to sit, lots of places for people to plug in. Prior to the renovation, people would just sit on the floor and plug their phones in wherever they could. So, so this is, it's just stunning. Here we have the entrance to the children's room. So this is sort of the age 8 to 12 area of the children's room. We tried to keep it very calming. We used to have an early childhood resource center down on the ground floor that was very sort of woodsy themed with greens and blues. So we kept that theme and we sort of lifted it up to this floor, but now it's twice as large. And then as you go down through the to the back of the room, this is sort of what you end up with. And again, these windows used to be as tall as the bookcases. So it's just really stunning, the views that you now have when you're actually looking out of the building. And then I would say that on this end of the building and on the other end, in the 80s, the original 1950s design had been very open, but in the 80s, they basically instituted a sort of a mall sort of theme to it, and they basically put bookshelves everywhere, fake columns. They sort of distorted the space visually. But this used to be nothing but book stacks, and there's a catwalk going across the other side of the book stack. So we basically pulled all that out and opened it up, and it's really just open and light and beautiful. This is actually, I'm going to go back. So you can see the sort of floor just above on the right, above the children's space. So that is the teen loft. We did not have a space for teenagers to hang out, and we have a really, really robust teen program. So you know that teenagers, they like to be in the middle of everything, but away from everything and soundproofed. That's what we got. And our engineers figured out that the old beams from the 50s were so strong that they could hang this entire floor from those beams without any support from below. So that's just how strong those beams are. And if you were in the space, you would see that the floor above it is raked because it's an auditorium floor. We had to pour several tons of concrete on top of that floor to make it ADA compliant. So even that on top of that and hanging that floor, that just goes to show how strong those beams were. The teen room, the kids actually selected the color and the layout for the room, which is really great. It is a small, cozy space. It's kind of a base camp for teenagers. They would go down to the workshop or one of the other spaces in the library to actually have their programs, but they can check out laptops. We have snacks for them, games. They can get homework help. We can help them with their resumes, basically whatever they need. And I have to say, it is, that this room is full literally with teenagers every day. We had decided in the 2014 strategic plan to focus on teenagers because there were all those high schools sort of across the highway, and these kids had really nowhere to go after school. So now they all come to the library, which is really terrific. And I'm a trained teen librarian, so that's kind of naturally where my heart goes. This is the third floor. You can see the top of the staircase right there in the center. In the front there, you'll see a Lego rendition of the public library. We had hired a Lego artist to build that for our grand reopening, which was supposed to be on March the 28th, 2020. You can guess that didn't happen, but we still have the Lego model. It's really cool. And then you'll just see that. So we've always had an auditorium, and then the space on the right where you see the king is, that used to be human resources and the business office. I'll just keep going. This is kind of a cool view of the staircase sort of going down to the ground floor. Hopefully it gives you a sense of the height of the building. And then this is the inside of the auditorium. It seats 265 people. We have been told by our sound engineers that we are second to the mall in the state for the cinematic experience, and I can vouch for that. We showed Star Wars during the pandemic to the whole staff, and we definitely can blow the house down with it. But it hasn't been used quite as much as we had hoped because I think people are still afraid of COVID. But I hope that we'll continue. Hope that the usage will continue to go up because it's such a really great space. And then on the other side of the auditorium, and this is on the corner of Empire and Washington. So this used to be, like I said, the finance department. And the ceilings used to cover the top third of the windows that you see there. So you can see how tall those spaces actually are, and then there's another 20 feet above the new ceiling. But this is a room that you could use for meetings, you could use them for classes. It seats up to 88 people. So we have Trinity comes over every month to have their board meeting. We have staff meetings in there. People have board retreats. It's a really great, beautiful space. And then in the old HR area, so I was saying that we have amazing special collections, but we never really had sort of a proper space to put them on display. So this is a museum quality exhibition gallery where we can now basically create our own exhibitions. We had a really great exhibition this spring called Tomboys, which was about identity. It was really, really terrific. We're working on one for next spring around COVID and storytelling around COVID. So it's been really, really in use. But I love this because we've never been able to have a proper exhibition space, and we actually get emails from other agencies around the country saying, hey, could you showcase like Shakespeare's first folio of one of his plays? And we say, no, we can't, because we don't really have like the storage facility, and we don't have the temperature and the air control and humidity control, but now we do. So that's really, really great. But we've had also, like, we're hoping that local artists will want to show some of their work in here as well. And then we've had several community projects which end up getting showcased in this space as well. It's really terrific. And then this is the Special Collections Reading Room, which was actually, so we're going into the 1900s building. So we basically renovated everything in the library that had not been touched by the 2012 renovation. So this is the old Barnard Room, for those of you who are library fans, who've been library fans for years, but it's now the Special Collections Reading Room. Again, it is temperature and air and humidity controlled, which is really, really great. Behind it, we have museum quality, a storage facility as well. So prior to the renovation, our special collections, they were under lock and key, but they would sort of roast to death in the wintertime and then freeze to death in the summer. So we're all like really excited that they now are properly stored, and we have a great camera system. So if somebody tries to cut something out of a book, we can catch them really quickly. And believe it or not, our old Special Collections Reading Room, you could only have one person in there at a time, but now you can have several, and it's been really, really busy ever since. So we have people who come, make research appointments. We have classes from Brown and from RISD and from other universities, and we have people who come in and just say, "Can I read the first edition of The Wizard of Oz?" And we say, "Sure, go for it." So it's really, really neat. This is one of my favorite spaces. This used to be Special Collections. So unless you were a Special Collections librarian, you were really never allowed into these spaces. But this is now the connecting hallway between the old staircase and the new staircase. And it has these beautifully sort of vaulted ceilings and just great views and great light. The floor that you see is the original 1900 floor, which is really cool as well. I love it. And when you can't, I didn't put it in the slideshow, but when you're coming sort of out from it, away from where you're going, you kind of step right into the atrium space of the auditorium. So it's like stepping out from the old into the new. It's really, really great. And then this here is the old Updike room. So I'm not sure, but maybe some of you know that we are home to the Updike collection on the history of printing and publishing. You can see part of that collection was too heavy to move, the printing press in the center, but it's a really terrific space. We have this spiral staircase, and I was actually talking to somebody today who remembers the library before the 87 renovation when we used to have glass floors in the stacks. So that floor that you see there, that's the last glass floor in the building, but it's really, really, it's beautiful. And now, again, it used to be Special Collections storage, but now everybody can appreciate it, which is really terrific. And then last but not least, this is the Martha Sherman mural room. So Martha Sherman, some of you probably know who she was. She was a huge champion for the Providence Public Library. She was a very generous donor to the library, and she was very fond of children's rooms. And this room was the children's room in the 1930s in the old building. And it's hard to kind of make out in the photo, but these murals that you see along the top of the walls, they're actually images of children's storybook characters from that time. So there's everything from like Humpty Dumpty to Little Women to the Cheshire Cat, Alice in Wonderland. It's a really terrific space. And then just to give you a sense of what we did to the exterior, this is the stacks part of the building. You might remember that the windows used to be glass blocks, so you actually couldn't see in to the windows, but it was failing and covered in asbestos. So we pulled all that out and replaced it with clear glazing, and now it's just this, it's beautiful to sort of come off the Apples Avenue exit and just kind of swing around, because you actually can tell that it's a library and not a post office, which I think is really terrific. And then you can also see that the top 2 floors are walled off, and that's where special collections are being stored. And then we lit it as well. Oh, we also cleaned the facade of the building for the first time since 1953. So you can only go up from there, right? And then this is a really great photo shot across the street from Trinity that just sort of shows sort of the lights and the colors now in front of the building. And then this is the new facade, which I never thought I would say that I actually like, but I think they did such a great job with it and the lighting that it's pretty exciting. So there you are. We're here. For those of you who haven't seen us before, I hope that you'll come down and see us. It's definitely worth it. My favorite thing to do is see people who haven't been into the library since the renovation, and they just come in and they're like, wow, I had no idea. And we hope that they'll come in and they'll learn. So that's it. And I didn't time myself. I don't know if that was long or short. Okay, questions? Yeah, go for it. Just shout them out.
Oh, we were fortunate enough to go and take a tour.
Oh, good.
Just within the last month. I think it was Wednesday or something, and the person who gave the tour was fantastic. And visit all those rooms and see them in person. It was quite a change.
Yeah, it's really different.
And really impressive. Great job.
Thank you. We're really proud of it.
The tour was advertised for an hour. She must have been with us for 3 hours.
Oh, that's Tonya. She loves to talk about the building.
We were so excited about it. We didn't even notice the time going by.
Yeah, it was
And
great.
it was great. It was absolutely great.
She's really good because she actually can tell you all the details in the 1900 part of the building and what that renovation was like. That was before my time when I was here, but she knows all the details. So I'm glad you got to go on that tour.
Thank you for bringing this.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
And the old Providence records, she was able to use while she was there.
I
I
looked up the newspaper that I was waiting to look up for 20 years.
Oh, good.
It was
Good.
I just loved it, everything about it.
Yeah, it's really
What
fun.
a space. What a space.
It's beautiful.
The whole tour was a wow day, but, you know, when you look at the pictures, these rooms are gigantic, some of them, but they're not cold, they're very warm and
Mhm.
inviting. And whoever the architect was, I don't know, but did a fabulous job of spatial things. I thought it was, and we used the library when we were young children.
Mhm.
We went down to the city, it was so different then. And the activity room with all the classes, the young people, it was so busy, I had to step back.
Right.
It was great.
It is. So I'm glad you brought that up. Our architect was Marian Upton. She's now principal at Design Lab in Boston, and they specialize in buildings that are historic. So they've worked in a library at UMass Dartmouth, and they've done other libraries and other sort of academic buildings. They did the Boston Athenaeum. So yeah, they were great. And just to sort of give some insight into the design process, one of the main problems we wanted to also solve was everything was spread out and duplicated in all these different spaces. So a lot of the design process was basically putting things, activities, and departments that are alike together and sort of uniting them. So special collections used to be spread out across, I don't know, a whole like 4 or 5 different spaces, but the project was actually able to bring them all together. The same thing with children's and the teens too. So that was really, we spent months sort of talking about what fits together with what.
And the windows too, I was looking at the outside, and basically the building looked the same to me, cleaner and sharper, but then she said, but the windows have been lowered.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, oh my God. And then we had an architect that spoke here a few months ago, and he talked about bringing the sidewalk to the building and how important that was. He put it in different words, but to bring the public into the building when they walk on the outside, it makes it very inviting, and that's a trait of a very good architect. And the first thing I thought of was that they lowered those windows, and it's amazing how you can look outside and watch people go by and people look inside and see what's going on in the library just by lowering those windows. Because the actual building is, on the inside's changed a lot, but on the outside, to me, it's modern, but there's not a whole lot of change that's going on. But the little bit that they did is magnificent.
I agree, and I'm so glad that you feel that way. We actually got pushback from the state and they told us that why would you want to activate that street? That street's dead. But it's really full of people, and people can come in and they can see what's going on all the floors now. So I'm so glad that you said that. Thank you.
It's incredible, it really is.
We'll start with you, and we'll go to you, we'll go to you. How about that?
Yeah, I thought that the architect was great, and the interesting thing is she really took what used to be kind of the back door.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really was, you thought, that's not the library.
Right.
Because there's the Beaux-Arts thing around the corner,
Mm-hmm.
But you go in the Beaux-Arts thing, you think, wait a minute, where's the library?
Right.
And instead it was almost like going into an underground station.
Right.
Or something. And now that that's all opened up and made the main entrance and the atrium, I mean, this is one of the best, what I would call new use of an old building.
I think so.
And she's kept all the good stuff. I mean, I think people should just go and walk around the stacks, which are
It's
just,
pretty exciting.
that's everything.
It's a really funny thing about the stacks. So we had actually, during this design process, we talked about pulling out some of the floors and just creating classrooms. But then we were told that the stacks are supporting.
Right.
So if we pulled out one of the floors, we'd have to pull out every floor above it and rebuild it. Yeah. So I always say that Rhode Island will always have 6 basketball court-sized floors of books, which is great, which is totally great. And we have a great collection. So, but that was kind of funny when we learned that. We were like, oh, okay, maybe not.
And it's interesting how a library is now different. It's not a place where books are held.
Right.
It's where people do things, and there are books.
Right. I had a conversation with the director of the American Library Association yesterday, and we were talking about, I think I said earlier, we were talking about how libraries, when Carnegie had them all built, it was all about creating access and creating literacy. And now we talk a lot about, like I said, achievement and learning, and so what happens as a result of that. So yeah, you're right, it's evolved for sure. Sorry, you're in the back.
So, I haven't been to the library since the Miracle, but seeing this slideshow, I'm very excited to go and do so. But for me, the miracle about going to the downtown library is finding a place to park.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've thought about that. I'm glad to hear that the students are just coming across the street and finding, getting the library to the library without having to drive there. But when you drive there, there's never anywhere to park. I don't know if you've given that any thought or.
We get this question all the time, and it costs $2 to park on the street for 2 or 3 hours, and and that's what people do. It's downtown Providence. It is what it is. I've been quoting Bert Krinka, because Bert Krinka from AS2 used to get the same question. He's like, "It's downtown. You pay to park." So that's kind of what it is, and it hasn't actually stopped people. Like I said, we have more people coming in now than we ever have. Our library card usage is up exponentially. I think even the door count was up 600% than it was since prior to the renovation. And every month we just have more and more people come through the doors. So I know a lot of people probably perceive that as a barrier, but a lot of people, it's not stopping them. And until the convention center wants to give us free parking, it's unfortunately probably not going to happen. But it's actually usually pretty easy. There's spaces all around the library on the street to park.
I was surprised that you were able to get those photos with no cars in them.
I think they did that in the very early in the morning.
Photoshop.
Yeah.
That was the advantage of, or the only advantage of COVID.
Right.
No cost.
And actually, it was COVID. It was during COVID when we did that. It was 2020. So you're absolutely right. I'm sorry. You've had a question. You've had your hand up for a
I
while.
was just wondering about the Washington Street entrance.
It's still there. If we have a special event for the library, or we're actually hosting the mayor's inauguration on January the 2nd, so it'll be open for that. So it's open for special events. I was telling Dietrich before, it's really interesting if you come for the tour, and I'm sure you three probably sense that, but you get so when we tour, we start from the ground floor up, and then we go through the 1900 building and back down, and then you come back out into the 50s building, and it's a very different vibe now that you get in the new 50s building. It is open, but it's so bright and so open, and it actually, I think it almost makes that old entrance in the old building look really dim and yellow. It's still beautiful. I actually used to check out people's books there in 1999 when I worked there, and you never got a sense of that old 1900 entrance or any of the beautiful architecture around it, because it was all painted hospital yellow and full of junk. So I was pretty floored when I came in for the interview and saw those spaces of 2012.
That 1900 section was fascinating. It's so much. It has a life now. That wasn't it. But anyway, the woman who was giving the tour, she said that the weddings is so popular wedding venue, and I guess they use that entrance into
They do, yeah.
that ballroom and things. But she said they're booked through 2022.
Oh, we're
Yeah,
booked
really,
through
seriously.
2024 probably.
Talk about popular and used. That building is. I don't think there's a place in it that doesn't have people in it.
It is. It is, and it's been that we used to say that business was about 10% of our revenue, but now our budget has grown so much that it's less than that, but it still supports the operations of the library. So, again, we are more than 85% privately funded. So if we don't get donations or we don't have this business, then we can't offer our services, unfortunately. So so when I talk about fundraising, we're very serious about it. We wouldn't be able to do and have anything that we were able to do and have the impact that we're able to do. I will say that, well, actually you already talked about it, the fundraising, so I'll keep other questions. Yes?
Thank you for this wonderful presentation. It was great to see the evolution of the library throughout the years. Can you also talk to us about its digital presence and some of the digital collections or
Sure.
what the library does, like in the online space?
Sure. So we did revamp our website, I think in 2017 or 2018. We modeled it on the V&A Museum and their website over in London. But everything is probably centrally located there. So our digital collections, so we have been digitizing aggressively ever since probably I got here. So we created provlibdigital.org. So if you were looking for, and it's actually not just Rhode Island images, it's actually images from many of our special collections, but our local collections, we have a postcard collection up, we have images from all the different cities and towns, we have images from our own archive. We just recently completed a project with the Boston Public Library, so we have the second largest collection of whaling log materials in the world, second to the Whaling Museum. So we just got all of those fully digitized, and they are up and available on provlibdigital.org. And we actually got a grant from FM Global, the insurance company, to hire oceanographers and marine biologists to essentially study climate change using those whaling logs, because they have very distinct, you can tell the latitude, the longitude, and the temperature. And so they will basically tell you that before 1920 something, like there are no really clear records of weather patterns except for in whaling logs. So they actually did a presentation for us recently where they've been able to track climate change in southern India as a result of our whaling logs.
Are there any plans to digitize all the microfiche files, because those are so susceptible to damage with use?
So interesting you should say that. The Providence Journal distribution is owned by a big evil corporation, and we have been approaching them to digitize it, and they want to do it themselves, and they flew a guy in from Michigan. He sat in my office, and I was like, you can just tell me this over the phone, and like it would have been $900,000 to digitize it, and to get the actual rights to digitize it and reproduce it. So, not anytime soon, unfortunately. We really would like to do that. We're piloting a database right now in the library of the journal, so you can come in and use it, but you can't unfortunately access it from home. I think they're hoping to sell that to us for $500,000 too, but we're not going to do it. But it's been a really fruitless. It's been really tough trying to crack that nut, and we talk about even doing it ourselves, but I guess we could get sued. So, but we have another. This goes back to your question about digitization. We are partnering with the Historical Society right now, and we're digitizing every other Rhode Island historic newspaper. So we've been doing it. We're on year, I think, 4 or 5 next year. So that we do have several other newspapers that have been digitized.
I thought Pratt was an art school. How did you go to an art school and become?
Because they have a library school. I thought that was the weirdest thing too, but they
Yeah.
do. And like the library school is right smack in the middle of all the art school classes, so
Yeah.
Wondering about that.
As I said, you were surprised, I'm surprised.
Well, I have to say that I was tempted to go to Pratt because you could take fewer classes and you didn't have to have like a thesis or anything at the end of it. So, so there you go. I was very lucky. The New York Public Library gave me a scholarship and paid for the whole thing. So I'm one of those lucky students with a graduate degree that didn't have to pay for it. So.
Nice. Before I thank Jack, I just wanted to invite you all, as always, to continue the conversation next door over pretty good food, I must say. Looks very good. And wine and sparkling water. But I wanted to say, I remember distinctly when the whole thing fell apart, the Providence Public Library, and it was such a desolate feeling of our city having come to an end. The city without a public library was just, and it seemed like that was the end of the story for a while. No one could have imagined what you accomplished in those days, and the images we just saw, I think, spoke for themselves. I think
Well, we're all good friends now. In case anybody's worried, everybody talks. We're all good friends. We're friends with the mayor. We're friends with the community library. So it's all a big happy
You
family.
had to rebuild all of those
Yeah.
relationships, and I just want to thank you for not just a great presentation, but for your gift to the city and to all of
Thank
us
you.
in
Yeah.
putting this together. Thank you.
My pleasure.